this, you have to understand there are some things that you believe and there are some things that you know. Now, your knowings are different from your beliefs in that your beliefs are handed to you. Your knowings all come from within. Everything that you know because you got it yourself. No one handed it to you. Like I watched the Winter Olympic trials a while back. And when I was a young boy, I was going to become a professional ice hockey player. And I used to go skating every single day. And then I let go of that when I was 18 and went into the service and spent some years overseas and all of that, and came out and went through all of the things of my life. And I get to now where I'm 52 years old and I'm watching the Winter Olympics with all of my children. And I say to my kids, we're all sitting there, and I say, yeah, I can do that. You see that Christy Yamaguchi over there? I can do those things. You can't do that, Dad. Come on. I said, yeah, I can do that. I used to be a great skater. I can twirl, and I can skate, and I can go backwards, and I can do figure eights and axles. I can do all of that stuff. I used to do all of that. Come on, Dad, you can't do that. I said, yeah, I can. I really can. So we have occasion to go to up into Massachusetts, and I'm putting on my ice skates after 34 years. Haven't been on skates in 34 years. Then I lace up the skates, and I'm getting ready to go out there and skate, and the kids are all like, oh, he's got to... And I go right out there, and within 15 seconds, I'm doing what I was doing 34 years ago. Skating, twirling, going backwards, doing all the things that were just second nature to me when I was growing up in Detroit, down in the Detroit River. And the interesting thing is that the body that knew how to do that in 1958 is dead. There's not one cell left in it. Yet the knowing is still there. I don't have the same brain. I have different cells. I don't have the same femurs. I don't have the same ankles. It's all different, replaced. And yet the knowing is still there. You see, a knowing is metaphysical in nature. Somehow, beyond the physical, transferred to the physical through some process that we can't even begin to comprehend. The knowings that you have in your life, like I know I can swim, I know I can dance, I know I can make love, I know I can walk, I know I can do all of these things that I have a knowing about, all came from within you, and all of the things that you believe in were handed to you. So consequently, your knowings will never let you down in times of crisis, and your beliefs will almost always let you down in times of crisis. Those things that you believe in are handed to you, and those things that are handed to you come with doubt, because someone else is giving it to you. This is what you're supposed to believe, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you do it. Yeah, that's great, and you're going to... But then there's a doubt attached to it. But that which you know isn't. Now, unfortunately, most of the things that we know as individuals also are in the area of what we know we can't do. We know what is impossible, what can't be done. So if I were to ask you, can you be in more than one place at the same time? Can your body be here, and can it be someplace else at the same time? You said, no, you can't do that. And if I said, well, could you transport yourself from here to, say, Montana or Spain, just through the power of your mind? You'd say, no, you can't do things like that. And I said, well, can you enter someone else's dream? Go into dream consciousness from the waking, go into someone else's dream and become a character in that dream voluntarily. You'd say, no. Can you fly? If you come across a tree, can you jump over it? Can you levitate? There's a lot of things, and those are just some of the extremes. But I want to remind you of what one of our spiritual masters said to us through St. Paul. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. Just let that into your consciousness. Because now we're talking about someone who is changing shape and raising the dead and feeding the hungry through the gift of manifestation of fish and loaves, changing water into wine. The ability to be able to create a miracle mindset for yourself is not available to you if doubt is in your consciousness, because what you think about is what expands. And if you have doubt, you will act on the doubt. You can't act on anything else. What you think about is what expands. The ancestor to every action is a thought. So if your thoughts are that this is not possible, that's what you will act on.
You were born with a voice. Not just the voice that makes sound through your throat, but the voice of your soul, a tone, a truth, a divine song that lives in the marrow of your being. Before the world told you who to be, before you learned to perform, to please, to protect yourself, you lived in the purity of that voice. You sang your truth without hesitation. You laughed without apology. You wept without shame. You moved through the world like light, unfiltered, unbroken, unafraid. And then something shifted. It didn't happen all at once. The silencing comes slowly, subtly. One moment, you are coloring outside the lines, and someone says, "Stay inside them." Another moment, you are dancing freely in the kitchen, and someone calls it too much. Another moment, you speak your truth raw, unrefined, honest, and someone flinches, turns away, or worse, withdraws their love. And so you begin to shrink. Not because you want to, but because you think you have to. To be safe, to be liked, to be accepted, to belong. You begin to trade authenticity for approval. You start sculpting a self that will be digestible to the world, forgetting that your soul was never meant to be swallowed whole by someone else's comfort zone. You learn to wear masks so well that even your own reflection forgets the face underneath. You silence the parts of you that are too bold, too loud, too intuitive, too passionate. You swallow your truths like bitter seeds and call it maturity. You learn to dim the divine fire that once lit up your spirit, afraid that its brilliance will burn someone else's eyes. But the truth, the real, holy, undeniable truth is this: you were never meant to be edited. You were meant to be expressed. You were never meant to perform for belonging. You were meant to embody the divine. You see, there is no version of peace that requires you to betray your inner voice. There is no true acceptance worth having if it demands the rejection of your soul. There is no lasting joy that comes from hiding your light to comfort another's shadow. And so I invite you, here and now, in this sacred moment of remembrance, to reclaim the voice you silenced to be accepted. Not because you are trying to be rebellious, but because you are ready to be real. Because your silence has cost you your wholeness. Because your compliance has come at the price of your aliveness. Because pretending to be someone you're not is a slow spiritual death, and your soul did not come here to die that way. You came here to live fully, loudly, freely, divinely. And that begins by listening for the sound beneath the silence, the whisper of the self, you buried beneath politeness, perfectionism, and the desperate need to be loved. That voice, it never left. It's been waiting for you to choose it over them. Waiting for you to realize that you are not here to be liked, you are here to be light. Waiting for you to fall in love with your own truth more than you fear their rejection. That voice is your soul. And it speaks not in fear, but in freedom. Not in conformity, but in courage. Not in performance, but in presence. And when you listen to it, something ancient and holy awakens in you, a remembrance of your original self, uncorrupted by ego, untouched by shame, When you speak from this place, even if your words tremble, the universe stands still to hear you. Because your voice, your real voice, is not just yours. It is God speaking through form. It is the divine echo of the infinite. It is the breath of the Creator finding its way back through your lungs. And that voice was never meant to be silenced. Not for love, not for approval, not for safety, not even for survival. Because what you silence to survive, you must one day resurrect to live. Let today be that resurrection. Let this moment be the quiet revolution of reclaiming your voice. Let the walls you built for acceptance become doors through which your truth re-enters the world. You do not need to scream. You do not need to fight. You simply need to stop apologizing for existing. Speak. Even if your voice shakes, live. Even if you are misunderstood, express. Even if no one claps. Because the reward of reclaiming your voice is not applause, it is alignment. It is the joy of no longer splitting yourself to be tolerated. It is the peace of coming home to yourself without permission or explanation. You are not here to be a puppet pulled by invisible strings of societal expectation. You are not here to be a mannequin dressed in acceptable opinions. You are not here to be a mirror reflecting what others want to see. You are here to be a portal through which the divine experiences itself raw, real, radiant, and that requires your voice. Not the voice the world trained you to use, but the voice that was born with you, the one that knows things before your mind catches up, the one that feels truth in your bones, the one that sings even when your lips are closed. Yes, that voice. It is time to unmute your spirit, because what you suppress does not disappear. It becomes suffering. It becomes anxiety. It becomes resentment. It becomes a quiet ache that whispers, there's more, and there is more. More of you to be lived, more truth to be spoken, more light to be released. You are not too much. You are not too loud. You are not too sensitive. You are not too anything. You are simply returning to your original design, the unedited soul, before the world asked you to shrink. And the world needs that version of you. Not because it will make everyone comfortable, but because it will make you whole. You did not come here to be accepted by the world. You came here to accept yourself so deeply that the world has no choice but to meet you at your level of truth. And if it doesn't, let it fall away. Let it dissolve. Let it exit. Because anything you had to betray yourself to keep was never aligned with your destiny. Reclaim your voice and watch as what is meant for you begins to recognize you again. There is a sacred intelligence within you that has never forgotten who you truly are. It has watched patiently from behind your compromises and beneath your politeness. It has witnessed the moments when you nodded in agreement to things that bruised your spirit. It has felt your hesitation when your truth rose like a wave only to be swallowed again by the fear of what others might think. But even then, it never judged you. It simply waited. Waited like the moon waits for night, knowing it will inevitably rise, because your truth cannot be erased, only postponed. And postponement is not peace. It is a slow erosion of authenticity, a wearing away of the divine pattern you came here to live. Every time you choose comfort over clarity, something ancient within you tightens. Not because you failed, but because your soul came here to expand. And contraction, though familiar, is not your home. There comes a moment, quiet but undeniable, when the ache of not living your truth becomes louder than the fear of being seen. That moment is not a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. It is the soul breaking through the concrete of conditioning, gasping for the air of its own expression. It is not the end of you, it is the return. And when you begin to return to your voice, it does not arrive all at once. It is not a sudden explosion. It is a gentle unfolding, like the first breath after holding it too long. Like a melody you forgot you knew, softly playing behind the noise of other people's expectations. You do not need to shout to reclaim it. You need only to listen, to make space, to remember. The voice you silenced is not angry with you. It is wise. It is patient. It knows why you hid. It knows why you traded expression for safety. It knows what you were trying to protect. And yet, it also knows you are ready now. Not because the world will approve of your authenticity, but because your soul can no longer survive its absence. When you begin to speak from this place, your words carry more than sound. They carry presence, they carry clarity, they carry the weightlessness of truth that no longer needs validation. And it is not just your life that changes the frequency of your being, shifts the room around you. You begin to realize that authenticity is not just a gift to yourself. It is a permission slip to others. The more you live out loud, the more you liberate those around you. Not because you convince them, but because you remind them of what they forgot inside themselves. Your reclamation becomes a reflection. Your voice becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, others begin to see the outlines of their own silenced truths waiting to be set free. But be prepared. Not everyone will celebrate your return to yourself. Some have learned to love only the mask. They have built a relationship with your silence, not your essence. And when you begin to speak, to stretch, to glow, they may shrink back. That is not a sign to stop. That is a sign to continue, because the people meant for you will never require you to disappear to be loved. True connection cannot be built on half-truths and rehearsed performances. It is forged in the fire of vulnerability, in the courage to say, this is who I am, without the edits. That kind of connection cannot be lost, because it was never earned through compromise. It was revealed through honesty. You may think reclaiming your voice means becoming louder, but often it means becoming more honest. Not louder, just clearer. Not more forceful, just more aligned. You begin to speak less to be heard and more to be real. You no longer throw your truth at the world like a weapon, but offer it as a light, steady, unwavering, enough. And even when the world resists, even when the silence around you feels deafening, your voice continues to rise, not from the throat, but from the soul. And in that sacred rising, you begin to realize something profound. You were never truly afraid of rejection. You were afraid of remembering how powerful your voice actually is. Because when you reclaim the voice you silenced, you do more than speak differently. You live differently, you choose differently, you love differently. You are no longer content with proximity that requires pretense. You seek depth, resonance, realness. You seek the sacred because you have become it. You begin to walk differently, not in arrogance, but in alignment, not in performance, but in presence, not in the need to prove, but in the knowing that your existence is already proof of something divine. Your truth becomes your compass. Your soul becomes your script. And the world, once terrifying, becomes a stage on which you no longer perform but create. There is no greater revolution than a human being who stops performing and starts living. No greater rebellion than to love yourself out loud. No greater power than the soul finally speaking in its native tongue, unfiltered, unashamed, unafraid. And the miracle is this: you were never waiting for the world to give you permission. You were waiting for yourself to stop apologizing, to stop shrinking, to stop translating your spirit into something safer, to stop rehearsing lines that were never yours to begin with. This is the moment you become real again. Not the version of you that gained applause, not the version that fit the mold, not the version that adapted to survive, but the version that burns with the original flame of your being. When you live from that fire, something holy happens. You begin to see the divine in everything. You hear the voice of God not only in Scripture, but in your own intuition. You feel grace not only in temples, but in your breath. You experience freedom not as escape, but as embodiment. And that voice, the one you silenced, becomes your guide. It does not scream. It does not argue. It does not explain itself to those who do not wish to understand. It simply radiates. It simply exists. It simply is. And in that isness, you find the peace you've been seeking in every external approval. You realize that you were never broken, only buried. Never lost, only waiting. Never voiceless, only quieted. You were always here, and now you are home. When the voice of your truth returns, it doesn't demand the world bow before it. It doesn't need to. Its presence alone realigns the atmosphere. It changes the way you walk into a room, not with dominance, but with rootedness. Not with superiority, but with sovereignty. Because you're no longer performing to be seen. You're already grounded in the truth that you are worthy, with or without applause, with or without agreement, with or without anyone's understanding. And isn't that the liberation your soul has longed for? Not to be louder, but to be unafraid. Not to be more palatable, but to be real. Not to blend in, but to finally belong not to them, but to yourself. Because self-belonging is the beginning of every miracle. It is the threshold through which all healing walks. And it begins not with changing who you are, but with remembering who you were before you were asked to hide. You see, every time you silenced yourself to make others comfortable, you planted a seed of resentment in the garden of your spirit. And now the weeds have grown wild, but they are not your enemy. They are your signal. A signal that says, it's time to clear the field. It's time to replant what is true. It's time to stop tending to the expectations of others and start watering the truth of your own soul. And the truth is not always clean. It's not always neat. Sometimes it's messy, emotional, inconvenient. But truth is not supposed to be convenient. It's supposed to be liberating. And sometimes liberation comes with shaking. Sometimes it comes with shedding. Sometimes it comes with solitude. But it always comes with peace. The peace of knowing you're no longer negotiating your identity. The peace of knowing you're no longer censoring your spirit. The peace of knowing that the sacred frequency of your soul is no longer being muffled beneath the noise of trying to be acceptable. You were not made to be acceptable. You were made to be alive, fully, radically, unapologetically. And when you reclaim your voice, you don't just speak differently, you become different. You start listening not to the world's commands, but to your inner knowing. You stop chasing validation and begin standing in vibration. You begin choosing people, spaces, and purposes that don't require you to edit your being. And in doing so, you become a living prayer, an embodiment of divine remembrance. The world may not always know what to do with someone who lives like this, but you will. You'll know. You'll feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the stillness between your words that you finally return to yourself. And that return is the most sacred journey you will ever take. Not to a place, but to a presence. Not to a role, but to your realness. Not to an identity, but to your essence. Your essence is not what others say about you. It's not your title. It's not your role in the family or society. Your essence is the eternal fire within you that knows, I am. I am not what I do. I am not what they expect. I am not what I've been told. I am what I am, and that is enough. You do not need a platform to speak from your truth. You need permission from no one but your own heart. And when your heart opens its mouth, the universe listens. Because when you speak from alignment, your voice echoes in realms you cannot see. You become a vessel for something greater. Your words begin to heal, not because they're perfect, but because they're real. The child in you who was once silent starts to breathe again. The parts of you that were punished for being different begin to dance again. The versions of you that were buried under layers of performance and pain start rising, radiant and whole, ready to live again. This is not a rebellion, it's a rebirth. And you are the midwife of your own becoming. There will be days when the old silence tries to return, when fear knocks softly, pretending to be safety, when you'll be tempted to go back into the box just to feel loved. But remember this, false love requires you to abandon yourself. Real love asks you to return, and returning is always louder than retreating, even when no one else hears it. So when the old voices whisper, tone it down, you will whisper back, I was not born to be an echo. When they say, don't be so emotional, you will smile and say, emotion is the language of the divine. When they say you've changed, you will answer, yes, I've remembered. Because the path of remembering always looks like rebellion to those who've forgotten. And still, you walk it with grace, with clarity, with the unshakable knowing that your voice is not too much, it is medicine. Medicine for the soul that starved in silence. Medicine for the heart that forgot how to beat freely. Medicine for the world that has forgotten the sound of authenticity. And every time you speak from this space, not perform but speak, you offer that medicine to others. Some will turn away. That's okay. Medicine doesn't always taste sweet, but others will weep. Others will awaken. Others will finally hear their own voice calling from the depths saying, if they can speak, so can I. And that is the miracle of your return. It is never just yours. Your voice becomes the tuning fork of a greater harmony. Your courage becomes the crack in someone else's cage. Your authenticity becomes the permission they didn't know they were waiting for. You begin to see you didn't lose your voice, you loaned it to fear, to approval, to control. And now you are calling it back with reverence, with certainty, with love. And when you call it back, it does not come alone. It brings with it your power, your intuition, your freedom, your divinity. Because your voice was never just about words, it was always the portal to your wholeness. And as that wholeness returns, something within you softens, not because you've become weak, but because you've become true. You are no longer fighting to be heard in a world that doesn't listen. You are finally listening to yourself. And that, in the deepest spiritual sense, is all you ever truly needed. It was never about volume. It was never about attention. It was always about truth. The truth that had been living inside of you all along, pressed down beneath layers of politeness, self-doubt, conditioning, and fear. The truth that once scared you because if you lived it, it might mean losing people. But now you understand, if your truth cost you someone, they were never really with you. They were with your silence. And how sacred is it to know that you no longer need to wear that silence as your disguise? The world has taught you to trade authenticity for approval, but your soul has always known the cost. The fatigue you've felt is not just from doing too much, it's from being too little of who you really are. There is no exhaustion like the exhaustion of pretending. There is no ache like the ache of hiding. And there is no freedom like the moment you stop. Stop hiding. Stop apologizing. Stop morphing into someone smaller just to fit inside the spaces others have carved for you. You were never meant to fit, you were meant to expand. You were never meant to be agreeable, you were meant to be aligned. You were never meant to be a reflection of someone else's comfort, you were meant to be a revelation of your own truth. And that truth may not be welcome everywhere, but it will feel like home within you. You'll begin to see that the places where your truth isn't safe are not sacred. They are assignments you've outgrown. They are invitations to return inward, not reasons to retreat again into silence. Every environment that asks you to abandon your voice is simply showing you where you no longer need to go. So you stop seeking to belong to rooms that were never built with your soul in mind. You stop trying to be loved for a version of yourself that doesn't exist. You stop auditioning, and in that stopping, you begin living. You begin waking up differently. Not rushing into the day to prove something, but rising with reverence for the sacred task of being yourself. You begin walking into conversations not with the fear of being misunderstood, but with the peace of being honest. You begin releasing the need to be right and embracing the joy of being real. And when you are real, you are magnetic. Not to everyone, but to the ones who matter. The ones who see your voice not as a threat, but as a mirror. The ones who meet your truth with presence, not resistance. The ones who remind you that your sacred sound belongs not because they approve of it, but because it is part of the symphony of existence itself. The world has enough echoes. It's craving originals. And you, in your truth, your light, your voice, are an original note in the divine orchestra of this life. You don't need to harmonize with distortion. You need only to vibrate with clarity. Your clarity is your offering. Your voice is your gift. And that gift does not need to be wrapped in perfection. It simply needs to be real. Because when you speak from the place of inner alignment, there is a resonance, not in the ears, but in the hearts of others. The words may fall from your lips, but their true source is the soul. And the soul speaks a language that transcends approval. You begin to live not from script, but from source. Not from expectation, but from essence. Not from what is safe, but from what is sacred. This is what it means to reclaim your voice. To no longer filter your light through the lens of other people's comfort. To no longer barter your expression for acceptance. To no longer wait for someone else to say, it's okay. Because now, finally, you are the one who says, I am safe to be me. And with that declaration, the world changes. Not always externally, but profoundly within. You begin to remember that your voice is not just your own, it is the breath of the infinite moving through form. It is the echo of the divine speaking itself into existence again and again through you. And when you deny it, you don't just silence yourself, you muffle a piece of the universe. You are not just reclaiming your voice for your own healing. You are reclaiming it for the healing of everything. Because your truth creates space for truth. Your authenticity liberates more than just your soul. It becomes a ripple, a vibration, a song that invites other souls to join in. And that is what the world is truly starving for. Not more noise, but more truth. Not more followers, but more leaders of the soul. Not more conformity, but more courageous beings who dare to be exactly who they are, loudly, lovingly, luminously. And you, dear one, are that being. You are not returning to your voice for validation. You are returning for liberation. Not just yours, but ours. And now, here you are, standing at the threshold of everything you silenced. Not broken, but breaking through. Not wounded, but wide open. Not lost, but arriving to the home within yourself that was never gone, only waiting to be remembered. This moment is not the beginning, nor is it the end. It is the great return, the divine reunion between your inner truth and your outer life. The voice you buried has become the key to your liberation. And you now hold it in your hands, not as a weapon, but as a compass. And with it, you no longer need to fight. You only need to follow. Follow the truth that no longer asks, will they approve? Follow the stillness that no longer begs for applause. Follow the knowing that says you belong, not when you're perfect, but when you're present. Because the journey was never about becoming anything. It was about unbecoming the noise, unlearning the stories, unraveling the shame until only the truth remained whole, holy, and humming with life. You may be tempted to ask, what now? But the better question is, who am I without the silence? And the answer is not something you will find in books or mirrors or voices outside yourself. The answer is what you are becoming as you speak, as you breathe, as you reclaim the space your soul always deserved. You are no longer just someone navigating the world. You are someone creating it from within. Your voice is not a reaction. It is a revelation. It does not shout over the noise. It outshines it. You are not a performer now. You are a presence, a light so rooted in its source that it no longer flickers in the wind of other people's opinions. And in this presence, everything transforms. You begin to walk differently, not for attention, but from alignment. You begin to love differently, not from need, but from fullness. You begin to choose differently, not to avoid discomfort, but to honor truth. You realize that being accepted by others means nothing if it costs you acceptance of yourself. You no longer need to mold yourself to fit. You no longer try to shrink into someone's comfort zone. You see now, clearly, irrevocably, that anything that requires the betrayal of your voice is a detour, not a destiny. There will still be days of doubt. That's not failure, that's healing. There will still be moments when the old silence tries to seduce you. That's not regression, that's memory. But now, you are different. Now, you recognize the voice of truth even when it whispers. Now, you honor the sacredness of your own yes and the holiness of your no. Now, you live from the inside out, not because it's easy, but because it's the only path that doesn't cost your soul. And what a life that becomes. Not a perfect life, not always a comfortable life, but a true one. And in the end, when all the performances fall away, when all the costumes and roles dissolve, what will remain is not how well you were liked, but how fully you lived as yourself. Your voice is your divine signature. It is the mark your soul makes on the world. It is not here to please. It is here to free. And the moment you trust that, you step into the most sacred kind of power, the power of a human being who no longer needs to be anything but whole. So walk on. Speak gently. Speak boldly. Speak honestly. Not to be heard, but to be healed. And in that healing, may others remember their own voice, the one they silenced, the one they buried, the one they are now being called to reclaim. Because the world doesn't need another echo. It needs your truth. And your truth has waited long enough. Welcome home. Welcome back to the sound of your soul. Welcome back to the fullness of your being. You are not just allowed to speak, you were born to. Now speak. And let the world remember what it means to be real. My dear, wonderful friends, tonight I shall share with you the most powerful secret in all of creation. How to speak to yourself in a way that will completely transform your world in just 3 days. Not in 3 months, not in 3 years, but in 3 days. For you see, the power of your inner conversation is absolute, and it is the only true creative power in the universe. Now, when I tell you to talk to yourself, I am not speaking of the idle chatter that most engage in throughout their day. I speak of that inner conversation that is deliberate, conscious, and aligned with your desired state. For your inner conversation is your consciousness externalized, and your consciousness is God. Consider the words of Scripture. In the beginning was the Word. These words are not speaking of some external deity's utterance. They speak of your inner word, your inner conversation. For you are the operant power, and your inner conversation is the word that creates all things. Many of you come to me asking, Wayne, how long must I wait to see my desires manifest? And I tell you now, give yourself 3 days of proper inner conversation, and you will see your world begin to transform. For 3 is the number of completion in Scripture. And when you maintain the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you set in motion forces beyond your current understanding. Let me share with you exactly how to conduct this inner conversation. First, you must understand that your inner conversation must be from the end. You do not speak of what you want to be true. You speak as though what you desire is already true. This is the great secret that most of the world has missed. When you wake in the morning of your first day, your inner conversation must be from the state of your wish fulfilled. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation must be that of a wealthy person. If you desire health, your inner conversation must be that of a healthy person. If you desire love, your inner conversation must be that of someone who is deeply loved. But then this is crucial. Your inner conversation must feel natural. It must not be strained or forced, for feeling is the secret. And your inner conversation must be accompanied by the feeling of naturalness. Let me give you a perfect example from Scripture. When David spoke to Goliath, his inner conversation was not, I hope I can win or I will try my best. His inner conversation was from the state of victory already achieved. This is why he could say with complete conviction, this day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand. Now for these 3 days, you must guard your inner conversation as though your life depends upon it. Because it does. Every time you catch yourself engaging in inner conversation that contradicts your desired state, you must immediately revise it. This is not a suggestion. This is a command if you wish to see your world transform. Consider this. Every outer conversation you have is first an inner conversation. Every relationship you have is first an inner conversation. Every circumstance in your life is first an inner conversation. Therefore, by changing your inner conversation for just 3 days, you literally change the entire substance from which your world is created. Let me tell you how to structure your inner conversation throughout these 3 days. In the morning, your first inner words must be from the state of your wish fulfilled before you open your eyes, before you move a muscle. Engage in the inner conversation of the person you wish to be. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation might be, I am so grateful for my abundant life. Money flows to me easily and continuously. I am surrounded by prosperity. But remember, these words must not be mere affirmations. They must be spoken with the feeling of knowing that they are already true. Throughout your day, your inner conversation must maintain the same level of conviction. When challenges arise, and they will arise, your inner conversation must remain steadfast. If someone speaks of lack, your inner conversation must be of abundance. If someone speaks of illness, your inner conversation must be of health. This is where most fail in their attempt to change their world. They allow their inner conversation to be pulled into the current circumstances rather than maintaining the conversation of their desired state. But I tell you now, circumstances have no power over your inner conversation unless you give them that power. For these 3 days, you must be relentless in maintaining your new inner conversation. When you walk down the street, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. When you eat your meals, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. When you prepare for sleep, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. Let me share with you a principle that I have tested and proven countless times. Your inner conversation is the only reality. Everything else, absolutely everything, is a shadow of your inner conversation pushed out. Therefore, when you maintain the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you literally create a new world. Many of you may be thinking, but Wayne, 3 days seems too short a time to change my entire world. Let me remind you of the story of Jonah. How long was he in the belly of the whale? 3 days. And after 3 days, he was transformed, and his world was transformed. This is not coincidence, my dear friends. This is law. 3 days of proper inner conversation is all that is required to set in motion the forces that will transform your world. But these must be 3 complete days, not 3 days of wavering between states. During these 3 days, you must guard your inner conversation, not just in your waking hours, but as you fall asleep. For the last inner conversation you have before sleep is particularly powerful. It continues to echo through your subconscious mind throughout your sleep. Therefore, as you prepare for sleep during these 3 days, your inner conversation must be perfectly aligned with your desired state. If you desire a successful business, your inner conversation might be, I am so grateful for my thriving business. My customers are delighted with our services. Profits increase continuously. But remember, and this is crucial, your inner conversation must be accompanied by the feeling of naturalness. It must feel as natural to have this conversation as it feels to speak of what you had for breakfast. This is where the power lies, not in the words themselves, but in the feeling of naturalness that accompanies them. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your outer conversations. Therefore, during these 3 days, you must be particularly vigilant about your outer conversations as well. They must align with your new inner conversation. If someone asks you how you are, your response must come from your desired state. If someone speaks to you about problems or difficulties, your response must come from your desired state. Your outer conversation must be a perfect reflection of your new inner conversation. Many of you may find this challenging at first. You may be tempted to engage in conversations about current circumstances rather than your desired state. But I tell you now, this is where your power lies in maintaining your new conversation, regardless of appearances. Consider the story of Jesus walking on water. What was his inner conversation? Was it about the impossibility of walking on water? Was it about the danger of the storms? No, his inner conversation was from the state of mastery over all natural laws, and his outer world had to conform to this inner conversation. During these 3 days, you must maintain the same level of conviction in your inner conversation. You must speak to yourself as though your desired state is already your reality, not as though it will be, not as though it might be, but as though it is. Let me share with you how to handle doubts when they arise during these 3 days, and they will arise. When a doubt appears in your mind, do not fight it. Instead, immediately revise your inner conversation. If you catch yourself saying inwardly, this isn't working, immediately revise it too. Everything is working perfectly. My world is transforming now. This revision must be immediate and complete. You cannot allow doubt to linger in your inner conversation. For remember, your inner conversation is the only reality. Therefore, a doubting inner conversation will create a doubting outer reality. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be dominated by gratitude. Not gratitude for what you hope will come, but gratitude for what is already yours in your desired state. This gratitude must be part of your inner conversation throughout the day. When you wake in the morning, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. When you go about your daily activities, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. When you prepare for sleep, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your inner states, and your inner states create your outer world. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of your wish fulfilled. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of wealth. Consciousness. If you desire health, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of health. Consciousness. If you desire love, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of being loved. Many of you may be wondering what to do if you slip in your inner conversation during these 3 days. Let me be very clear. You must not condemn yourself. Instead, immediately revise the conversation. Remember, you are training yourself to maintain a new inner conversation. And like any training, it requires practice. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your primary focus. Every other activity must be secondary to maintaining your new inner conversation. For you are literally recreating your world through this conversation. Let me share with you how to structure your inner conversation for specific desires. If you desire a new home, your inner conversation might be, I love living in my beautiful new home. Everything about it is perfect for me. If you desire a promotion, your inner conversation might be, I am so grateful for my new position. It's everything I desired and more. But remember, these are not mere words. They must be accompanied by the feeling of living in that new home, the feeling of working in that new position. Fulfilling is the secret, and your inner conversation must generate the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be specific. Vague inner conversation creates vague results. Therefore, speak to yourself with clarity about your desired state. Be specific in your inner conversation about what you are grateful for, what you are experiencing, what you are enjoying in your desired state. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates self-concept, and your self-concept creates your world. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about who you are, not just what you have. If you desire success, your inner conversation must be about being a successful person, not just about having success. If you desire abundance, your inner conversation must be about being an abundant person, not just about having money. If you desire love, your inner conversation must be about being a loved person, not just about having a relationship. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be continuous, not in the sense of constant chatter, but in the sense of consistent alignment with your desired state. Every time you become aware of your inner conversation, it must be from your desired state. Let me share with you how to maintain this continuity. Set reminders for yourself throughout the day. Every time you look at your watch, every time you eat a meal, every time you enter a room, let these be triggers to check your inner conversation. But remember, your inner conversation must not be mechanical. It must be aligned with feeling rich with the emotion of your desired state. For it is the feeling that gives power to your inner conversation. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be sovereign. You must not allow anyone or anything to dictate your inner conversation. Not circumstances, not other people's opinions, not past experiences. Nothing must have power over your inner conversation except you. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your expectations, and your expectations create your experience. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must create the highest expectations of good for yourself. Many of you may be thinking, but Wayne, what if my desired state seems impossible? Let me remind you, nothing is impossible. To your inner conversation. Your inner conversation is God in action, and to God, all things are possible. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about possibility, not probability. You must speak to yourself from the state of your wish fulfilled, regardless of how probable or improbable may seem to your rational mind. Let me share with you how to handle apparent failures during these 3 days. If something happens that seems to contradict your desired state, your inner conversation must remain unchanged. You must speak to yourself as though the seeming failure is actually part of the perfect unfolding of your desire. Remember, your inner conversation is creating your reality, not the other way around. Therefore, no external circumstance has the power to change your inner conversation unless you give it that power. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your constant companion. It must be the lens through which you view every experience, the filter through which you interpret every event, the standard by which you measure every circumstance. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates a belief system and your belief system creates your reality. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must consistently reinforce the beliefs that support your desired state. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be a perfect reflection of the person you wish to be. You must speak to yourself as that person would speak. Think as that person would think. Feel as that person would feel. Let me share with you how to maintain this level of consciousness. When you catch yourself speaking from your old state, immediately ask yourself, how would I be speaking to myself if I were already the person I wish to be? Then revise your inner conversation accordingly. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about what is not, what was, or what might be. You must speak to yourself in the present tense from the state of your wish fulfilled. This is crucial for the manifestation of your desire. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates future, but it does so by creating your present. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must make your desired future your present reality. Many of you may be wondering what will happen after these 3 days. Let me tell you, if you have maintained the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you will have set in motion forces that must result in the manifestation of your desire. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your primary tool for creation. Every other method, every other technique, every other approach must be secondary to maintaining your new inner conversation. Let me share with you how to know if your inner conversation is correct. If it feels natural, if it feels real, if it feels true. Even in the face of contrary evidence, then your inner conversation is correct. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be protected like a precious jewel. You must guard it against doubt, against fear, against negativity. For your inner conversation is the very substance from which your world is created. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates a relationship with yourself, and your relationship with yourself creates all other relationships. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must reflect the highest, most loving relationship with yourself. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your sacred practice. You must treat it with the same reverence that a priest treats his prayers, that a scientist treats his experiments, that an artist treats his creations. Let me share with you how to maintain this level of devotion. See your inner conversation as your direct connection to the creative power of the universe. For that is exactly what it is, your consciousness in action creating your world. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your constant reminder of who you really are, the operant power in your world, the creator of reality, the God of your uniqueness. And that, my dear friends, is how you must talk to yourself for 3 days if you wish to transform your world. Not sometimes, not occasionally, but consistently, continuously, constantly. For your inner conversation is the Word of God in action, and it cannot return void. Remember this, your world is your inner conversation pushed out. Therefore, guard your inner conversation for these 3 days as though your life depends upon it, because it does. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue with your old inner conversation, creating the same results you've always created? Or will you begin today, this moment, to maintain a new inner conversation that must create a new world? The choice is yours, but the law is absolute. Your inner conversation creates your reality. Therefore, speak to yourself for 3 days as though your desires are already fulfilled, and watch your world transform. That's the message I want to leave you tonight. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. Not because it's simple, but because it's powerful. Not because it's what you expected to hear, but because it's what you needed to hear. Remember, 3 days of proper inner conversation will transform your world every single time. And isn't that worth thinking about?